Jar Oil. The company have filling stations across the country, and our rates are relatively cheaper than anyone else across the country. Jar Oil is the biggest producer and distributor of cement in the country with the most competitive prices in the market.
Axel jam si Wave.
Yo, apply. Yo, luta do dede. Luta mo nulo jël moto nga andil ma xaalis. Hello?
Bisol mu fine.
What?
Bisol mu fine.
Oh, yes!
Wave Axina Gambia. Deposit and withdraw money, pay bills and buy mobile credit without fees. Transfer money wherever in the country for only 1% fee. At Wave. Bisol mu fine? Wave. Your money is yours.
3rd of October 2025, you're with Coffee Time with Peter Gomez, coming to you live on FM 92.1 across the country and online at www.wcr.gm. Thanks for joining us. Joining me now is one of the most thoughtful voices in the Gambia's journey towards truth and reconciliation, Dr. Baba Galleh Jallow. As the former Executive Secretary of the Truth, Reconciliation and Reparations Commission, TRRC, the famous TRRC, Dr. Jallow helped steer one of the most consequential national processes in recent history. And so for the next hour or so, he joins us to reflect on the legacy of the TRRC, the moral weight of transitional justice, and the challenges of turning recommendations into real reform. I call him Alhaji Baba. Alhaji Baba, welcome to Coffee Time with Peter Gomez.
Thank you, Alhaji Peter.
And I must begin by embarrassing you. You know, we've been in this building now for close to 3 years. Yes. And I was surprised to hear you call me and ask where we had moved to.
Exactly. My bad, sir. I apologize. But the issue is part of the time I wasn't here, and then, I've not come around this area for some time now. So
fantastic.
Yeah.
Good to have you here this morning.
I'm glad to know and see the new place.
For the younger Gambians, whenever the name Dr. Baba Galleh Jallow is mentioned, the one thing they think about is TRRC. But there was a Baba Galleh Jallow long before we ever thought that there was going to be a TRRC. For the young ones like our cameraman here, Martin, our sound controller here, Rohi, give us a brief background to yourself.
Well, thank you very much, Peter. That's correct. I was born in Farafenni, so I'm a Badibunka. The key uncles can go and eat chere if they want. I was born in Farafenni, went to Farafenni schools, primary and secondary, Armitage High School, then Gambia High School, sixth form. And then I went to Forabe College in Sierra Leone for my BA, History and Political Science. Came back, worked for WIC a little bit, and then joined the Daily Observer. So I was there for some time, and then when the Daily Observer was bought by Amadou Samba, I started the Independent with my colleague, Alhaji Jallow.
Did you leave based on principle or what? Did you leave the Observer to begin the Independent based on principle or what?
Based on principle, because they bought the paper. And they said to me, Sariang Sise and Amadou Samba said to me that they were going to remove D.A. Jao. What did they call it? They were rearranging the paper, and so they wanted to get rid of D.A. Jao, who was the news editor.
They were restructuring.
I was the restructuring, exactly. I was the editor-in-chief at the time. So I said, well, if you remove this guy, I know you're removing him because of his focus, his criticism of the regime. And if you remove him, I'm going to resign. So I don't think they believed me. And Amadou Samba and Sariang Sise, they invited me to a meeting at Kanifing at the Gasem factory then. And Amadou Samba said to me that I will give you a house, I'll give you a car, I'll give you a 100% salary increase because you come highly recommended from Mr. Best. Just stay on and help us.
Mr. Best, the founder of the Daily Observer.
The founder of the Daily Observer, yes. So I said, well, those things are good, but if you sack D.A. Jao because of his opinions, I'm going to leave. And they thought I was kidding because I was a poor guy, and they thought that the car, Mercedes-Benz 280, a house, 100% salary increase would entice me to stay. And so on that following Sunday, they handed over a termination letter to D.A. Jallow. He's probably listening right now.
He is, yes.
Yes, and so the next morning on Monday, I handed over my resignation and then went and started the Independent. And that was seen as some kind of a confrontation to the government that we are fighting, the government. But I left the Observer as a matter of principle. You cannot buy integrity.
And just moments ago, you described yourself as a poor guy. So where did you find the money to start the Independent? Because starting a newspaper then probably still, was difficult, probably still is difficult.
Well, it wasn't difficult as such.
It wasn't?
We got a little money saved up, of course, and then Quantum was very helpful. But I remember Badu Gay,
yes,
my good friend, was there, and then Mohammed Jah. They had just started Quantum Network.
Yes,
and
Gibi Chor.
And the late, what was his name again? Koro Sise.
Mm-hmm.
So Badu Gay came. He was very helpful. He said to me, Baba, we can give you guys 3 computers and a printer on loan. That was a blessing. So we took that, and then we were able to buy newsprint, and we were able to print the paper at the Ahmadiyya Press on a weekly basis. So we started as a weekly, and then eventually grew to bi-weekly.
And then the Independent launched, and almost immediately began having problems with the government. Without taking too much time, what's been the story in brief of the Independent under your stewardship?
Well, when the Observer management was dismantled, for example, Kenneth Best was deported and so on, we had started writing critical stories about the regime. And so when we started the Independent, when I left the Observer, we knew that the Observer was owned by either Baba Diop or Yahya Jammeh. They saw that as an affront to the regime. And the moment we started, they started coming and threatening us. We were arrested several times by the NIA. They said we had not registered the business name of the company, which wasn't true. We had been paying taxes and registered the business name. And so they were just harassing us. And eventually, in March 2026, they eventually closed the paper. But I had already left the country because of threats to my life, and went to America.
Okay, so when the premises of the Independent were being burnt down, you had already left.
I had already left.
Alhaji Yoro was now the editor-in-chief.
He was the managing editor, we appointed Madi Cisse. Deja was there briefly, then Madi Cisse, then. What's the name of this guy again? The guy who was tortured. I'm forgetting his name.
Not Abdoulaye Sy?
Not Abdoulaye Sy was also an editor-in-chief at the paper briefly.
Okay. Yeah. It's a paper with a very sad past. Would have been lovely to have it still going. Just like the Point has also been through some very, painful past. But thank God it's still here.
Yes.
Let's talk TRRC. And looking back at the whole process, what do you consider to be the TRRC's most significant achievement?
Well, I think there has been a shift in mindset. There has been a transformation in the civic culture of the country. I think I would point at that as one of the most significant achievements of the TRRC. But the commission itself as a model, as a new model of truth commissions is very widely respected in the world. And, that too is a major achievement because we departed from the old ways of doing truth seeking and created a new model and did it, the Gambian way, a new way that has now, won the respect of the entire world, I would say.
Mm-hmm. I'll have you, delve deeper into that. But were there moments during the open hearings, that deeply moved or challenged you personally?
Oh yes, many, many times I cried in the hall. I got up from my chair, went behind, the kitchen and cried. The commissioners cried. So there were moments that were very, very challenging emotionally in terms of the type of brutalities that I had were inflicted on Gambians by Gambians. So emotionally, yes. I never got angry as such at the testimonies of the perpetrators, for example. You know, you have to be able to maintain a stable mind. But emotionally, I cried a lot, many times.
And how did the commission balance, you know, the need for truth-telling with the emotional toll on witnesses and even some of you, as you just started explaining there?
Yes, we had a victim support unit within the Secretariat that also had a psychosocial support subunit. So we had trained psychologists and trained social workers there that would give trauma advice and counseling to victims and perpetrators alike, and staff if they need it, before the hearings, during the hearings, and after the hearings. So if you watch the TRRC hearings, you might see once in a while when a witness breaks down, someone getting up from the front row and going to the witness. So that was a staff of the psychosocial support unit. So that's how we dealt with it. I never had any counseling. I didn't think I needed it, so I didn't have it. But everyone else, the victims in particular, had psychosocial support.
And what preparation, you know, took place before victims came on cameras, came on the platform to testify?
A lot. It was a very complex but, you know, structured process. For example, we made calls for victims, you know, and witnesses to come forward if they had any story to say. And so when they came forward, they went to the victim support unit and they registered, you know, sorry. After they registered, they were then ushered to the research and investigations unit. In that unit, you had statement takers, you had researchers, and you had investigators. So the first point of touch would be the statement takers. They would take their statements, and those statements would be passed on to the researchers and the investigators to you know, verify before anything was done. And then the statements that were verified were passed on to the legal team. In consultation with the research and investigations director, myself, and the commissioners, they then decided that, you know, let us invite this particular victim to come. So we started with the victims. Remember, we started with Ibrahim Chongan, and then a series of other victims. So the names of the perpetrators who appeared before the commission actually came out of the victim testimonies. So if a victim says, I was tortured by Peter Gomez, for example, Peter Gomez would become an adversely mentioned person. And so the commission, the Secretariat in particular, would write to that person and say, you have been adversely mentioned, how do you respond? And then you responded, you know, and then the commission, especially the legal team and the commissioners, would determine whether to invite you to come and testify or not. So that's how the process worked.
And did you reach out to every person adversely mentioned?
As much as possible, not every person. Not every person, but we reached out to a lot of the people that were adversely mentioned, maybe 99% of them.
That's good to clarify, because we have Sheriff Samsudin Sarr, former commander of the Gambia National Army, complaining that he even offered himself, to give testimony because he had been adversely mentioned, but he was never invited to quote him to go and give his side of the story.
Yeah, that's right. And I wasn't the one who made the decision, but I know, for example, that even before he was adversely mentioned, they were adversely mentioned, some people were out there insulting the commission, saying the commission was, unconstitutional, illegitimate. They did not recognize they're insulting literally the commission at various levels. And so if the legal team and the commissioners decided that they did not want to invite somebody, it was our discretion. We were a commission. We weren't obliged to invite anyone to come and testify, especially if you know that there is a particular bias, or what we see as a particular bias. It might not have been biased, but we can only speak from our perception. Then we didn't have to call you. And he wasn't the only one. There were others too, who were out there disparaging and insulting the commission and calling us illegitimate. And, for example, Yankuba Toure said he didn't recognize the authority of the commission and so on. So why would we invite you to come and repeat the same insults and the same biases? We were after the truth. And if we knew that you were not going to give us the truth, or at least part of the truth, then I see no reason why you would take the trouble and the resources to invite a witness who wouldn't add any value to the work that we are doing. I'm not saying that was the case with Samsar, of course, but the commission had a discretion to invite or not to invite people, and they used the discretion. And
then, of course, the commission became a big television spectacle. People were watching from right around the world. Do you think that this television success, if you like, impacted the work of the commission in any way?
In a positive way. The fact that the commission, the hearings were broadcast live on TV, on radio, on social media, that was a deliberate policy. It was the policy of transparency, which is extremely important in transitional justice. If you want the process to be credible, it has to be transparent. Everyone needs to know what was being said. And the other reason why we adopted that transparent policy approach is that we wanted people to know exactly the findings of the commission before the commission makes the findings formally, so that no one can come forward and say, they cooked the evidence. I don't think anyone can say that, even though people have said witnesses were paid, which is not true. But we wanted to make sure that people knew exactly what was going on, what the witnesses were saying, and they knew the commission's findings before the findings were codified into a report. So the recommendations were not known, but they could be anticipated. If you listen to Jallow or one of some of the perpetrators, for example, you would know that the commission would recommend this. But the idea was to make sure that everyone was on board, because the TRRC was conceived as a national conversation. Traditionally, truth-seeking processes were controlled processes where the commission would sit behind closed doors, do their hearings, and then the public would be an audience. We bridged the divide. We made sure that this is a national conversation. Everyone has a stake in it. And so, hence the transparency and the inclusivity of the process, which is why the commission, has credibility here and around the world to this day.
How were the staff prepared? People like yourself. I mean, because we never had a truth, reconciliation, or even reparations commission in the country before to learn from. I mean, this was the first time it was happening. So how was the staff prepared?
Well, you perhaps that I was invited. I was teaching African history.
You were headhunted.
I was headhunted at LaSalle University in Philadelphia. But because of my history of advocacy in the Gambia L and the community of Gambian scholars and online writing, I was called by the government, in particular by Batombedu, and told that, look, we are looking for an executive secretary for the TRRC, and we think that you would be a good candidate. Would you be interested? And I resigned from my position, again, for the second time at LaSalle. I was just about to be promoted to associate professor. Like, this was the fall of 2017. In the spring of 2018, I was going to come up for tenure, for review, for tenure and promotion as associate professor. I left it and I came home. And I was self-taught. You probably know that I was the only staff of the commission for quite some time, at least the first 3 months of the commission. And I was the only staff that was not paid. I wasn't paid any salary for 6 months. Oh, wow. For the first 6 months, from February 2018 to around July, August. I wasn't paid at all. No car, no office, no salary. And the Ministry of Justice is hearing me right now. They know Mr. Tomasi was here at the time. And Ida Parsons, post-TRRC was also here, but at the UNDP. So we set up the whole thing, and I must say I was self-taught. I had taught a course on South African history at LaSalle University and at Creighton University that included a week or 2 week segment on the South African Truth and Reconciliation Commission. But other than that, I was self-taught. But once we started the process, we got support from UNDP here. We got support from the PBS, the Peace Building Fund, PBF. We got support from ICTJ, from IFID, the Institute for Integrated Transitions, from International IDEA. They helped bring in experts who then trained our staff. train them in statement taking, for example, victim support, psychosocial support, train the commissioners and so on. So we got a lot of assistance from these institutions to train the staff and commissioners as time went on.
And during these 6 months that you kept working but
yes.
wasn't being paid, did it not cross your mind once to throw in the towel and go back to LaSalle?
Oh no, absolutely not. I never imagined that.
What kept you going? How did you motivate yourself to keep going, even though you needed money for one reason or another?
I needed money, I needed a car, I needed an office.
Yeah. None of which you had at the time.
Huh?
None of which you had during these first 6 months.
First 6 months, no. Mr. Tomasi Hussein was here, and I was working very closely with him. They did not pay me for the first 6 months. No car, no office, nowhere. So
how did you keep yourself motivated to keep working without, what was definitely a need?
I didn't even need to keep motivated. I mean, I was motivated already. I was struggling to earn a dictatorship. As you know my history with arrest and detentions and so on. I was in exile for 17 years. And now I had an opportunity to assist with correcting the wrongs that I had been fighting for. And so I did not need any hard push, to stay on and do what is required. I was intent on doing the work. I left an associate professorship in the US.
Sure.
That's a lot of money if you want prestige, but I didn't look back. I was determined to come here and do the work as it should be done, continue doing the work and succeed. And the mantra we had at the TRRC at the time, if you ask any staff, they would tell you, we said failure is not an option. And when I had interviews, even with you, I said failure is not an option.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And we just made so we did it.
So you were headhunted, offered the executive secretary position, and then I suppose you were given a list of the commissioners and especially who the chair was. I mean, when you read that, what did you think of the lineup of commissioners, especially the chair?
No, it did not happen like that. The commissioners were selected through a very rigorous nationwide consultation process after a few months after I came in. Okay. I think the selection process started.
So you were the
June.
First employee of the commission?
I was the first employee of the commission. The commissioners were selected by regional selection panels in each of the regions of the country. If you remember, there was a call for nominations for the commissioners here. But in the regions, each region had a 7-man regional selection commission, 7 persons, both men and women, that went from district to district, from village to village, and had the people nominate the commissioners that they wanted. At the end of the day, 3 commissioners from each region were nominated and sent to the Ministry of Justice, and they, selected the eventual 10 commissioners. The chair, of course, was also headhunted from the UN and invited to come and serve. So that is how it worked. I wasn't given a list. All I was given was a list of the positions that they suggested, some of which I kept, some of which I discarded, some of which I added on, and a budget. I was given, the amount of money that we had. And Batambedu just said, Baba, just go ahead and set this thing up, help us set it up and get it up and running.
And was the budget up to or way below what you had envisaged?
It was. I did not envisage any budget when I was coming, but it was good. We never had serious budgetary issues throughout the commission's period. To the credit of the government, they gave us the funds we needed when we needed them. Every 3 months, they gave us an allocation, that we used to pay salaries, and so we never really had any financial issues.
A while back, you alluded to people making allegations about witnesses being paid.
Yeah.
Were there no expenditures on victims, whether you want to call on people witnesses, whether you want to call it pay or allowance or logistics, as we say?
Well, victims who had problems coming from upcountry, for example, we did provide allowance for them, transportation.
Okay.
And if they were supposed to testify tomorrow, they had to come from Basse, for example. We did provide overnight accommodation and lunch. And we had vouchers for lunch for all witnesses at the TRRC. There was a restaurant that was run partly by the commission, by a victim. But, he gave us discount, and so we had coupons. So all the witnesses who came would actually go there and have lunch and a drink.
But not to say, well, because you testified, this is the fee for testimonies, and because you have done so much time, maybe this is what you earned.
No, absolutely not. There was no such thing as reward or compensation for testimonies. That was something that was peddled by the critics of the commission, mostly supporters of the former government. But it wasn't true. I wouldn't subscribe to a lie. Not for my own life. I wouldn't do that. I mean, if somebody wanted to suggest that kind of thing, I would say no, it wouldn't happen. And I signed the check, so it did not happen. I can tell you that.
All right.